72 Days in the Andes. The incredible true story of Flight 571. Imagine your plane crashes high in the frozen Andes Mountains. You survive the impact. But when you look around, there is nothing. No town, no road, no hospital. Only mountains, snow, and freezing cold. You wait for rescue. One day passes, then another. Then you hear something on a small radio. Something that destroys the little hope you have left. The search has been called off. The world believes you are dead, but you're still alive. And if you ever want to see your family again, you're going to have to save yourself. This is the incredible true story of the survivors of Flight 571, October 13th, 1972. A Uruguayan Air Force plane was flying toward Santiago, Chile. On board were 45 people. Among them were members of the Old Christians rugby team, along with friends, relatives, and crew. They were young, excited. Many were looking forward to playing a rugby match in Chile. Nobody imagined that some of them were about to spend more than 2 months fighting for their lives. As the aircraft crossed the Andes, the pilots were surrounded by thick clouds. Then, suddenly, a mountain appeared dangerously close. There was almost no time to react. The pilots desperately tried to climb, but it was too late. The aircraft struck the mountain. One wing was torn away, then the other. The fuselage slammed into the snow and slid violently down the mountainside. When everything finally stopped, there was silence. Flight 571 had crashed, high in the Andes. Some passengers died immediately. Others were badly injured. Those who could move began helping the wounded, but they soon discovered just how desperate their situation was. They were trapped thousands of meters above sea level. Temperatures could fall far below freezing. They had almost no proper winter clothing and very little food. The broken fuselage became their shelter. At night, they crowded together inside it, using whatever material they could find to protect themselves from the cold. During the day, they melted snow for drinking water. They divided the small amount of food they had brought aboard. A few chocolates, some snacks, small amounts of wine. They rationed everything, because they believed rescue was coming, and above them, search aircraft really were looking. Sometimes the survivors could even see the planes. They screamed, they waved, they tried desperately to make themselves visible. But against the enormous white landscape, the white wreckage was almost impossible to see. The planes passed overhead, again and again, and then they stopped coming. Around 10 days after the crash, one of the survivors heard devastating news through a small radio. The official search had been suspended. They had been presumed dead. Imagine hearing those words while you're still alive. For some, it felt like a death sentence. But something changed within the group. They finally understood. No one was coming. If they were going to survive, they would have to do it themselves. But another problem had already become critical. Food. There were no plants, no animals, nothing growing beneath the deep snow. Their tiny supply of food was gone. Their bodies were starving. Eventually, they were forced to confront an unimaginable decision. The bodies of those who had died in the crash remained preserved by the freezing temperatures. After painful discussion, the survivors decided that if they wanted to live, they would have to use the bodies of the dead for food. It was not a decision made lightly. Many of them were deeply religious. Some initially refused, but starvation left them with almost no alternative. They chose life, and that terrible decision helped keep them alive, just when it seemed things could not become worse. The mountain struck again. During the night, an avalanche crashed down onto the wreckage. Snow poured into the fuselage. The survivors were buried. 8 more people died. Those still alive found themselves trapped beneath the snow, inside the same aircraft that had already nearly killed them once. They fought desperately to dig themselves out. Eventually, they escaped, but the avalanche changed everything. Waiting was no longer an option. The mountains were not going to let them survive forever. Someone had to leave and find help. Several attempts were made to explore the surrounding mountains, but the landscape seemed endless. Eventually, Nando Parrado and Roberto Canessa prepared for the journey that would decide everyone's fate. They had no mountaineering experience, no professional climbing equipment. They were weak from weeks of starvation, and they had no accurate idea how far civilization really was. But they had something more important, a reason to keep moving. Their friends were waiting behind them. Their families believed they were dead. And somewhere beyond those mountains, there had to be another human being. So they started climbing, step after step after step. The thin mountain air made breathing difficult. Their bodies screamed for rest. But turning back meant almost certain death. After climbing high enough to see beyond the surrounding peaks, Parrado discovered something terrifying. There wasn't a city waiting on the other side. There were more mountains, as far as he could see. But they continued, because, at this point, hope wasn't knowing they would survive. Hope was simply refusing to stop. For days, Parrado and Canessa crossed the Andes. Then, the landscape slowly began to change. They saw signs of life, vegetation, animals, and eventually, something they had been dreaming about for weeks, a human being across a river. They spotted a Chilean muleteer named Sergio Catalan. The rushing water made conversation impossible, so a message was eventually passed across. Parrado explained that he had come from a plane that had crashed in the mountains, and that survivors were still waiting at the wreckage. Catalan understood. Help was finally coming. After 72 days, the world discovered the impossible truth. There were survivors. Rescue helicopters flew into the mountains, one by one. The remaining survivors were taken from the place where they had fought hunger, cold, fear, avalanches, and despair. Of the 45 people who had boarded Flight 571, 16 came home alive. The lesson: the miracle of the Andes is not simply a story about surviving a plane crash. It's a story about people refusing to abandon one another. They shared food. They cared for the injured. They created tools from almost nothing. And when waiting for rescue was no longer enough, 2 exhausted young men walked into the mountains, not knowing whether they would survive, because their friends depended on them. Most of us will never find ourselves stranded in the Andes, but all of us will face mountains of our own. There will be moments when the road ahead looks impossible, moments when help doesn't arrive, moments when giving up seems easier than continuing. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson these survivors left us. You don't always need to see the entire road ahead. Sometimes, you only need enough courage to take the next step, and then another, and another. Because sometimes, on the other side of the mountain, life is waiting. Beyond motivation, the world is full of incredible stories. Stories of survival, courage, hope, and the incredible strength of the human spirit. If you enjoyed this documentary, please like, subscribe, and become part of the Beyond Motivation family. Together, we'll continue exploring the world's most unforgettable true stories. Remember, every story has a lesson, and every lesson has the power to change a life. Until next time, take care, stay inspired, and I'll see you again soon in our next unforgettable documentary, only on Beyond Motivation.